We get a lot of rain within Ireland, and I notice like how different the people are when it's a day without rain. I take it literally, but then I thought, a day without rain, what can it mean to the individual? And I loved it for that, because I know anybody listening to the album will conjure up their own visuals. As far as inspirations go, what I write about is of life, nature, of love, and I've just felt there's a time where I feel that I'm kind of, there's this yearning to write and express, you know, this feeling with my melodies, you know, so the moment was right. A lot of people sort of say we don't know much about Enya, but if you listen to the albums, you'll actually realize you know a lot about me, you know, a lot more about me than you realize, you know, because to me it's like opening my diary. My influences are, you know, music would be sort of like Irish traditional music, but I also do classical music, so there's a, you know, combination of both those influences within my music. Both my parents are musical, and my father, he toured many years with a show band where he would perform Irish ballads combined with the hits of the time, and of a set like a Glenn Miller type of band. And my mother is a music teacher. What they gave me was a great love of music. I get quite a bit of letters, you know, from fans, and what's incredible is not just being successful worldwide, but it's the age, you know, barrier, you know, that it crosses right over, getting a letter from a 10-year-old to a letter from an 18-year-old man who only listens to classical music but has started to listen to Enya, or a couple who played the music at a wedding, or, but then there are sort of moments, you know, that they share because they feel I've shared quite a bit with them, and they feel like they can confide in me like I was their friend, you know, and that's quite special. I really have enjoyed the fact of being able to focus on something that I love so much, which is music, and getting the opportunity to share this with so many people. I just enjoy it so much.
It's a process that's deeply solitary. No collaborators beyond her producer and her lyricist. What you hear is all Enya. So is almost all of what you see.
Bring the speakers in closer, just give me a second.
And for someone whose music's been compared to the sound of wind chimes with words, there's nothing ethereal about the way she works.
I'm very involved as far as like how I'm portrayed, how the song is portrayed is very important to me. There's a stage where you do storyboards, and you read the storyboards and you go, no, you know, this isn't suited, or I'm not happy to do that. No, I won't go filming on location, which I don't really enjoy because it's just so time consuming. But once I'm happy with the storyboard, happy with costumes and the people that are surrounding me that I know, then basically I sit back and let the director worry and enjoy it.
Put the board in, and play back. Rippling, please. The rippling enough for us.
Making videos is one of her few concessions to marketing records. Tough-minded isn't how it looks when it's done, but this is how Enya wants us to see her. A solitary artist for whom privacy's been something of a personal achievement.
Quite long periods between albums.
Yes.
So what do you do in your spare time?
It's 5 years since A Day Without Rain was released, and basically why it's taken so long for Amarantine to be released. It's 5 years. So what I've been doing is, with an album, when it's released, I do quite a long promotional trip, and you know, about 6 months later I'm still in Tokyo, Australia, in America. So I spent a year promoting A Day Without Rain, and then right at the end of the promotional trip I got a call from Peter Jackson to work on the soundtrack for Lord of the Rings, and the next thing I was flown to New Zealand to view the first cut of the film. And it was very exciting because I read the book when I was 17. I loved it. So it was a wonderful project to be involved in.
You read the
and
whole book?
I did, and I get to
stopped
sing in
after
Elvish. No, I read it all.
After The Hobbit, I found Lord of the Rings a bit on the long side, but I was
It's a journey.
It is a journey.
It's a journey you take with it.
And Elvish,
Yeah.
you mentioned, you got to sing in Elvish.
Yes, I did.
It's one of the lesser known languages.
It's a fictional language that Tolkien wrote, and the lyricist that writes my lyrics for me studied the Elvish and loved it, and I was able to sing the 2 songs in Elvish, and because of that, actually, the lyricist Roma Ryan, she decided for this album to create a fictional language, which is called Loxian. Which was very, very interesting.
And it's based on what, this language?
This is fictional language. And firstly, it was influenced by when I sung a song, I make particular sounds. And it's a lot of the time, I think it's known that I don't sing all my songs in English because my first language is Gaelic. But I've also sung in Latin, I've sung on this album, I've sung in Japanese, I've sung in English and in Spanish, and it's like I'm being asked why, and the reason is why not? Why not? Because the music can be very dictative to myself and Roma and to the producer Nicky Ryan, and it's kind of like where I take so long to write this melody, and when I capture that sort of emotional feeling that's very inherent in that melody, it's really important to enhance that feeling and not lose sight of it. So sometimes the lyrics are there, they're in English, and I'll sing them, and it's too obtrusive. It doesn't actually sit well with the arrangement. And I'll try Gaelic, I'll try Latin, but this time Roma came into the studio and she handed me the lyrics, and they began with Sium Braea, which is the Loxian language, and it just worked perfectly.
To let your heart believe it's true.
Now, your album's out on Monday, but as you say, you're a native Gaelic speaker, but you're not using Gaelic, I think I'm right in saying, for the first time on this album. Why is that? Because it's so much part of you, and it's part of your appeal, isn't it? You've given this international attention to the Gaelic language. Why have you decided to omit it from this album?
It's a case of the melody wasn't there. You know, it's as I was saying about sort of singing in Japanese was because of the sound. Like when we had the theme about this journey, and also like Roma was reading the poet Basho's poetry, and she said the words Samaragusa to me, and it was like, well, what's that? That's Wild Violet. And I thought, well, you know, the journey, you know, she was talking about, it was kind of like this sounds like it would actually sort of capture what the song is about, and the sound was what suited for my voice to sing the song. So it was a case of I tried the Gaelic language and it just didn't actually gel with any of the melodies.
You're from Ireland, obviously. You're Ireland's best ever selling artist, I think I'm right in saying. You've sold tens of millions of albums. What's it like, your music and your voice being so omnipresent? Because you must wander around all the time and hear yourself in shops and in cafes and in bars. That must be a very, I suppose you're used to it now, but it must be a very strange feeling.
I had to say, you know, the first time on hearing Ornoco Flow, it was, it's very encouraging as a musician, you know, to firstly work on something which is, to me, you know, it was very uncommercial, and not knowing, is there an audience for this music? And when I released Watermark, there was no idea, you know, how successful it would be. So to kind of hear for the first time Ornoco Flow on the radio, it's incredibly encouraging.
Yes, but now you're sitting there having your, you know, your sarnies in the local cafe or whatever, and it's you on the radio again. Does it just become routine? You stop noticing yourself?
No, I
still...
I find it's a big encouragement, because as you know, I have such big gaps between my albums. So I always feel I cannot take it, you know, for granted that each album is going to be successful. And because of that gap, it always feels like, to me, it's like a first album. This is, Amarantine's like a first album to me, because it's like 5 years, And all I did was I concentrate on the music. When the record company would ask, you know, when are you ready to release, I'd be saying, no, not yet, not yet, you know. So I'm kind of concentrating on the music. So when you finish the album, it's then you start to think, well, will anybody enjoy this music? Is there anybody going to listen to it? So that makes it like the first album.
How do you see your music developing from here on? Do you think ahead? Do you have a kind of strategy to see how your musical direction is likely to go? Or do you wait for each album to inspire you as it comes along?
I feel that at this stage, when I just finish an album, it's very difficult to talk about the next album, because I feel I've got to gather my inspirations. And at this stage, I don't know what they're going to be, because when people sort of say, well, what is different to each album? And the only way I can sort of describe it is, like, each album has 12 separate little stories that took a while to put together, and they're quite diverse. And that's what I'm looking for, really, is sort of, once I sort of finish with promoting the album, I like to sort of take time to sort of to gather influences, and it can be a moment, an emotional moment, it can be a landscape, it can be a city, it can be people. So I'm not sure, you know, what the influences are going to be till I go in to start the next album.
More movies. Do you think that's something you'd like to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I just love it, because it's very, very different to write when you have a visual, and it's very different to write for an album when you don't have a visual, because it's, as I describe it, it's like a blank canvas. But I love both challenges.
And elves, presumably, much easier to write for than hobbits. Just a thought. Listen, good luck with your album. It's out on Monday, and I look forward to hearing it.
Thank you very much.
Irish singer-songwriter Enya is one of very few pop artists who've managed to enjoy successful careers while preserving their privacy. Known for her reclusive lifestyle, which sees her spending much of her time in her castle in County Dublin, Enya has managed to amass an estimated fortune of around £75 million, taking her to number 95 on the Sunday Times rich list of wealthiest Irish people. After leaving family band Clannad to launch a solo career, she contributed to several soundtracks before breaking through with her solo album Watermark in 1988. Heavily laden with synth pads and vocal effects, the album's lead single, Orinoco Flow, topped the charts in the UK and went to number 2 in Germany. Her second album, Shepherd Moon, sold 10 million copies and won her a Grammy Award. Ever since then, her music has shown up in countless films and TV shows, keeping the royalties rolling in. In 2001, her song Only Time was used as a soundtrack to many radio and TV reports about the September 11 attacks.
When I heard about CNN using the song for the footage after the 9/11, my feeling was, like everybody else in the world was, it was such a traumatic and awful event that we wanted to be in some way to be able to comfort the people in New York. And in a way I was able to do that through the music, and we felt it was important to give them hope again, that through this traumatic moment that life would in some way become normal again. So it was good to be able to help them in this way.
A self-confessed slow writer, Enya didn't release another album until late 2005. Amarantine earned her 4th Grammy Award for Best New Age Album and reached the top 10 in both the UK and the US.
On Amarantine, my lyricist created with me a new fictional language, and it came from working on Lord of the Rings and singing in Tolkien's fictional language, Elvish, and it was very, very interesting. And so when we were working on Amarantine, it came about that we decided to experiment with a fictional language. And I have to say that a lot of people have said how much they enjoy it, even though they don't understand it, but then they don't understand when I sing in Gaelic or in Latin or various languages, but they enjoyed it very much. It was a very positive reaction. And at the moment, working on the Christmas album, I'm not sure if there might be a Christmas Loxian song. I have to say, on travelling to promote the album Amarantine, that it was yet again a very positive reaction to the music, to the different languages I sing, the different themes that I covered in the album. It was, to me, it's very important, and it's very encouraging that, you know, it's something I work on in the studio, and then to have people who enjoy the work. It's kind of so rewarding and very encouraging to me to continue with my work, so I enjoy it very much. To me, working on an album, it's a long time putting the album together. And since the success of my first album, it's been very important to me to forget the success, because I find that can distract you in the studio, because I'm trying to write music, I'm trying to perform the music, and I feel that I don't want to repeat what I've done previous. So it's very important for me that when I go to the studio, I isolate myself completely from thinking about performing, thinking about sales of the album. And I do it so well that every time I finish an album, I have to say that it feels like my first album. You know, I feel, is there anybody going to listen to this music? Are they going to enjoy the music? So the fact that there's success with an album, to me, is again so encouraging, so rewarding, and it just makes it for me that, you know, to go back to the studio, it's kind of brings sort of being creative within yourself. So I enjoy that. I was in Kyoto last year, and I have to say it is so beautiful. I was there briefly a few years previous. It was only just for a day, and it wasn't long enough to see Kyoto. So this time I ended up getting to see more of the city, and I have to say that it's seen an older side to Japan, which I'm fascinated about. It's seen more of Japanese culture, so I enjoyed it very much. I have to say that when I travel, there definitely, to me, there are moments can be with different people, different cultures. It can be a landscape, it can be a beautiful garden. I have to say that that in itself is always an inspiration to writing music, but I'm not sure how it will evolve. It's something that I kind of have to wait and see when I'm in the studio. I sit there and then I will concentrate on the music, and then when I write the piece of music I can hear, oh, the influence, it's from, you know, from that garden, or it's from, you know, being in a different city or meeting with people. So the influences are very much there from traveling. Working on the Christmas EP for Target was a very special project, because a few years back, many years back, I recorded Silent Night, Ihihyun, as it's known in Gaelic, my first language being Gaelic. And when we recorded this, it was very successful, and we had thought a lot about, at some stage, of doing a Christmas album. So therefore we were very excited when we were approached by Target to work on the EP for the Christmas songs. I enjoy Christmas very much. It's a time of excitement, it's a time of family, get together, you know, and it has that magical feeling that people enjoy. When I was young, I would be involved in the church choir, and it became very important to me when I was away at boarding school to come home and be with my family, and then we would all attend midnight mass, and to participate in singing all those wonderful hymns. I enjoyed it so much. That was the beginning of Christmas for me, was at midnight mass. I have to say I was very excited being invited to perform at the Rockefeller Center for the lighting of the Christmas trees, and to perform for NBC, because firstly I love Christmas, and New York is a beautiful city at Christmas time. I've been there several times. And the Rockefeller Center is so beautiful. That's where the tree is. And they have the skaters. And it is absolutely beautiful. So I'm very excited about my performance with the show.
You're very welcome. It's good to see you again. Now, please.
Thank you.
Have a seat. It's great to see you again. The song, My Time Flies, dedicated to Jimmy. Now, why?
Jimmy was a very close friend of Nicky, who I work with, and we were working on this track, which had a very sort of Beatles feel to it, and Jimmy Faulkner was a very big Beatles fan, so we decided to dedicate the song to him, and also his friend there, Pat Farrell, played the solo, and the first time for me actually to have a guitar solo in a song, so it was it all sort of fell into place. Yeah.
You occasionally do things that are not typical of what you generally do. For example, I dwelt in marble halls.
Yes.
Another sort of adventure out of your genre. 70 million albums.
Yes.
I mean, it's a massive achievement.
Yes, it is. Yes.
The question of the difference between success and fame, because you enjoy both, but you're happy with one, but not so happy with the other.
I always say that success and fame are two different things completely, and with the music, it's now 20 years since, you know, the success of Watermark, and I felt that the music itself was what sold, you know, and it was a case of the success, you know, was focused on the music for me. So in that regard, I've always been comfortable with that the focus hasn't always just been on my life, that it's always on the music.
20 years is a long time to be at the top. I mean, your music keeps on selling all around the world. Looking back at those 20 years, are there particular highlights, first of all, and then maybe the odd lowlight?
There's quite a few highlights, you know, with the success, again, with Orinoco. Introducing the music worldwide was just so wonderful a moment for me. And I'd have to say, performing in the Oscars was quite a big highlight for me as well. The downside for me would be, as far as, I suppose, these ongoing stories with stalkers that I get, that is something that I've had to live with. And I
mean, is it an ongoing thing? When one stalker is dealt with, is it automatically that he is replaced pretty immediately by another?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. So it's a case of you take precautions, but I cannot live my life sort of locked behind closed doors. I have to sort of travel, I have to work, I perform. So it's something that you deal with, but you try to sort of put to one side as well.
Yeah. In dealing with stalkers, I mean, what do you do when they're identified to you? Do you ask yourself, what is it about me? Why me? Or is it that every sort of famous female has her share of these kind of people?
It's a fixation that a person sort of has on another person, and I find it's a very sad place for them to be, and they need help. But unfortunately for me as well, it can lead to death threats, and it can lead to sort of where you fear for your life as such. So you have to kind of be careful, you know, what you do. So.
But is it a kind of, in your view, a delusional thing that because of your music, which is quite ethereal a lot of the time, quite otherworldly, do you think that they believe that you can, I mean, you're a musician and a composer, that's what you are. You have a spiritual dimension, but do you think that they believe that you can bring something into their lives in addition to what your music brings in?
It can vary for so many different people. It's a fixation they have, and it could be to do with that. It has to do with that they're in a very unhappy place in their life, and some of them actually need to get help as such. And sometimes the support isn't there, you know. So I sympathize with them, but I have to sort of then be careful as far as my own security as well.
Yeah. Do you have pilgrims at your gate? I mean, I often walk past your gate with my dogs on a Sunday morning, or past Bono's gate, which is just a stone's throw away, and there are invariably people there taking photographs. You know, there's me up against Bono's gate, that sort of thing. Do you get that?
Have you been there?
I quickly pass. I wave at the security camera. I wave at the security camera. Morning, Bono. But do you get that kind of thing?
Yes, yes. You get
That's
people.
okay.
That is fine. When people come along to take a photograph outside the grounds, and you know, they take, you know, they capture a moment for themselves. They've been there to Ireland, and they visit, I'd say, a few places, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. You are characterised in the press as reclusive, but you say far from it. That you're actually out and about an awful lot.
It's like for the last 6 months I've just been traveling around the world since like September. You know, when I'm at home I would be in the studio at times. I travel quite a bit as well with my work, or, you know, with leisure.
When there's a new album out, you'd be travelling for what, half a year?
Well,
maybe?
I've just come back from Salzburg and from London, and prior to that in New York and Japan, and so I've been on a non-stop sort of travel, sort of.
There's a particular image associated with you, and can you, with a few deft brushes of the hair and a pair of shades and a pair of jeans, sort of become someone who's not Enya and walk down a street in New York or in Tokyo?
You can, so long as, you know, if you go along with a huge entourage and come out of a car wearing sunglasses, yes, you're going to be recognized. But there are times where, if you're quite discreet, you can actually get around, you know, certain cities without being noticed. Yeah.
I mentioned highlights. You said the Oscars, certainly, and bringing Orinoco Flow to a world audience. But you also met one of your idols, Sir Paul McCartney. You mentioned the Beatles earlier as well.
Yes.
What was that like? I mean, you obviously knew who he was. Did he know who you were?
He did.
Tell us about the encounter.
Well, it was for the Oscars, they had us all performing one after another. Sometimes they have it that there is each song, it's actually quite isolated from each other, but we were all performing at the same time on stage. So Sting had sung his song first, and then I had sung, and it was then Paul McCartney, Sir Paul McCartney, and then it was Randy Newman, who I'm a big fan of, and Faith Hill. So it was so wonderful to meet, because I was a big fan of Sting as well with the Police. So to meet with them all, and they knew my music, and we admire each other's works.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about was the inspiration for your songs. As I say, your songs have a spiritual dimension, an ethereal quality, but you also have to seek out that inspiration somewhere. What do you do to kind of get in touch with your muse? Do you go to Donegal?
It's everything. It's from my travels now for the last 6 months. It's from meeting people. It's different cultures. It can be landscapes. There's so many inspirations that are there, but I'm not so aware of them till I go into the studio, because there's only one place that I will work, and that's in the studio, not in my home in the castle. And I just love to sit, and it's a very solitude moment writing music, but I just love to sort of sit there and sort of see what will evolve. What
Are
is
you disciplined? Do you say, I
Yes,
will work from
yes,
10
I
until
am.
3 or whatever it is?
I am, yeah. I just sort of feel it's important. I still am a very slow writer, composer, so I feel I have to sort of set times where I will work for, say, a month. And maybe within that month I mightn't have written anything, but I feel it's a day closer to finding that melody.
Well, you will no doubt find many more melodies.
You're very kind.
In the meantime, the current album is out. Do you have any, slight regrets about, your albums are huge all over the world, and sometimes, that you're like the prophet in his own land, or a bit overlooked. Do you feel sensitive about that, or are you happy that you can achieve a normality in Ireland that maybe wouldn't be possible if
That's a good question. I always feel I come home to Ireland, so at the moment, maybe that is the attraction to it, that here you're sort of grounded more, brought back to sort of you know, where you were brought up. And so it's, you know, 1 minute you're in New York, like you said, or in Tokyo, and doing very big shows and talking to so many people, and then you're back to, you know, what you know and where you were brought up. So you can, you know, I think that can be a good thing as well.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on the show. It's
Thank
an
you.
occasional thing you and I do, but
Yes,
it's
it
always
is.
lovely to have you. Thank you, Enya, very much for joining us on the show
Thank you
tonight.
so much.
And Enya's current album, And Winter Came, is out now, and it's a pretty good album for the weather we've been living through in the last few days.
Her music is often described as enchanting and heavenly. As Ireland's biggest selling solo artist, Enya has sold more than 70 million records and has won 4 Grammys. For her, music has always been present in her life.
First time on stage for me was 3.5 years of age, so yeah.
And how did that happen? Stage mom?
It's to do with my family are very involved. They were very involved in theatre and music, and I loved it. I was drawn to music. I studied music as a subject and singing in the choir, so it's just something that I've just loved. The culture of Ireland, we're very passionate about the arts. You know, if it's literature, if it's artists, if it's musicians, it goes quite deep.
Her 7th album, And Winter Came, features 10 original songs and 2 holiday classics.
This album, I went into the studio with the idea of putting together a Christmas album, because I have a great love of Christmas time, Christmas carols.
Enya composes most of her own songs by piano and even sings in her native Gaelic tongue.
For me, it was my first language. So, you know, it is compulsory at school in Ireland to be taught Gaelic. It's very different when it's your first language, because when I converse with my family and friends, I still would converse with them in Gaelic.
What is the first verse in Gaelic?
Ihe hiún, ihe vigje, cansun, G sharing. There are certain songs that capture different times of winter. O Come Emmanuel is an Advent Christmas carol.
O come, Emmanuel.
It's a piece particularly Enya and myself have always loved. And we thought, well, you know, if we're doing carols, if we're including carols, why not pick the ones we love the best?
I was introduced to it at boarding school when I was singing the school choir. Very beautiful piece. I wanted to really sort of do a rendering of my own to this very, very classic, very, very old carol.
To you shall come